Although I find an awful lot of people who walk around proudly with the name manager on their name tag, and they're bring it up in every conversation they can to let you know that they are in charge, and indeed they are proud to be managers or supervisors or team leads in all kinds of situations, and for good reason. It's a great thing to be a manager. It's a great thing to be a supervisor. It's a great recognition that somebody sees more value in you. There's so much more value in you that they're willing to put you in charge of other people. It is a big deal. At the same time, it is getting, in my experience anyway, it is getting increasingly hard to find people who actually want to do the work that is required of people that are in charge. And we can see this in every industry. Although I work in long-term care, so nursing homes and assisted living centers is where I'm basing most of my experience and knowledge off of, but you can see it even outside of my industry. You can see it in any kind of, you can see it in government, you can see it in communities, you can see it in local department stores, you can see it in the police department. There seems to be it seems like nobody wants to be an adult anymore. Like there's no adults in the room anymore. Nobody is willing to do the work an adult does. When I was a kid, the neighbors would tell you to stop cursing. If you were out in front of your neighbor's house and you were cursing as a little kid, the neighbor would come out and go, watch your language. Don't be talking like that. And I know that there are some people today that would be like, I can't believe you would ever say that, saying to the neighbor, don't say that to my kid. At the same time, you know what that did? It made it so that we knew what was right and what was wrong collectively. We knew that it was wrong to use foul language, and adults would call you on it. No matter if they were your related adult or not, they would be like, hey, kid, don't use that language. Or if you were caught picking on somebody, or you know what I mean? Like I was a small kid growing up, and somebody would bully me. A random adult would step in every time. If they saw it happening, like, hey, leave him alone, give him back his hat, that kind of thing. Even though they had nothing to do with the situation, they didn't know me, they didn't know the other person, but nobody was afraid to be the adult, And that's a interesting just backdrop to how I'm viewing. It seems like nobody is willing to be the adult anymore. And fine. If you don't want to be the adult, don't be the adult. You want to turn a blind eye, turn a blind eye. You don't want to just let stuff happen, let stuff happen. But when you're in a management position and you're not willing to be the adult, I got to say that although this has been something that I have been dealing with as a management development coach, I work with managers, people who are normally, most of the people I work with everybody in long-term care, nursing homes, like I said, but normally they're coming from the super worker position and they're trying their best to move into a supervisory position. Normally they've been, bumbling around trying to be an effective manager, an administrator, executive director, director of nursing for a year or more before I get involved. And so they've had some experience with doing their best to try to maintain some sort of semblance of order. And I got to tell you that the number one thing that I keep coming across is this whole concept of I shouldn't have to. I hear that more often than I hear anything else. Managers literally saying, well, I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to. I work with a bunch of adults. I shouldn't have to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I shouldn't have to go behind people. I shouldn't have to. And if you want to back up in an existential kind of way and look at it from a 1,000-yard view and go, when you're making an agreement with somebody, say, hey, I'm going to pay you this amount of money for you in exchange if you could just take care of these few things for me. I agree that it would be an amazing situation, so lovely and wonderful. And it does happen, I know. But it would be just such an amazing thing if you could just step back away from that relationship and just go, all right, here's the money. Will you please go do that? And they go do that. That would just be amazing. It would work like everything is supposed to work. And it's important to recognize that if that were to happen, well, we don't need managers. There's absolutely no place for a manager. A manager has both the best and the worst job at the same time. They have the best job in that for those of us who really like to teach, and most effective managers, certainly coaches like myself, we are in the education game. We love to teach. I love to teach. So if you're in that position because you want to show and teach and inspire people, then that's the best part of being a manager. The best part about being a manager is when you get a new person in who's just as eager and excited to learn this new thing and they want to make a difference. And again, we work with people with end-of-life issues. People who normally come to a nursing home, unless they're there for rehab, which is a short stay, they're figuring out what the last few precious moments of their lives are going to be. So it's, we hold our profession as pretty important. And so when you find people who want to work in that profession because they care, because they have some experience, because they want to do great things, I mean, there's no better position to be in than to be a manager when you're working with those people. At the same time, it is the worst position to be in when you find the opposite. You find people who just want a job. They're just there to do a job. And if they could get paid the same amount of money and do less work, that makes them very happy. And of course, the struggle with managers is that, our job is to make sure that you do exactly what you're supposed to be doing for the money you're supposed to be getting. I mean, imagine at the end of the day, if instead of giving you $15 an hour, we just decided halfway through the day, you know what, we're only going to give them $7 an hour. And at the end of the day, we just give it that's what we decided to give you. Every employee in the world would lose their mind. How dare you? But that is quite honestly what happens to managers all the time. We're paying somebody $15 an hour for $15 an hour for amount of work that they're supposed to be doing, and then they just at some point throughout the day they're like, forget it. I'm not gonna finish my job. I'm not gonna do it to the best of my ability. I'm just gonna sit here on my phone, and they just simply don't do the job, and so that makes it really complicated. And so I was on Facebook this weekend, and I belong to this Facebook group that is for nursing home administrators. And it is a great, big recommendation here is to whatever industry you are in, find a Facebook group or a Twitter group or a LinkedIn group, something, Instagram or whatever, a group that you can tap into, because this group is from all over the country. People are writing in with questions, with survey questions, with state questions, with staffing questions, maintenance logs and surveys. And, it's just a really great, wonderful place to exchange ideas and questions and reports and mechanisms and stuff. It's really, really well done. At the same time, there are a handful of occasions where I will read somebody's post and it just leaves me scratching my head. And that's kind of what triggered today's video and triggered today's question about why nobody wants to be a manager anymore. No, it seems like it's very hard to find people who are willing to do the actual work of a manager. And this is the question. Somebody anonymously posted, which I think is one of the greatest things that this Facebook group is able to do, that you're able to ask questions anonymously, because that really, it allows people to be honest, without fear of retribution. And somebody asks a really simple question. Does anyone have any tips or tricks for getting CNAs to document we're struggling. Now, for those who don't know, a CNA is a certified nursing assistant, and they're the ones who do an awful lot of the day-to-day work of what we call ADLs, assistants, activities of daily living, the ADLs. Normally, barring a big event like a fall or something like that, most of the time you're going to find people going into a long-term care center as a customer, as a resident. Really, it's the decline of the ADLs, meaning, and again, ADL means activity of daily living. Meaning, for your whole life, you have been able to cook for yourself. You've been able to clean up after yourself, been able to use the bathroom by yourself. You've been able to, remember to take your medications. You've been able to get up and do whatever you need to do freely. Those are activities of daily living. And then as we get older, there will come a time, trust me, I've been working in long-term care for 20 years, there will come a time for all of us where we will start needing a little bit of assistance with those activities, whether it's shaving or bathing or using the bathroom or, preparing meals or cleaning up or whatever. And so the CNAs, the certified nursing assistants, in some places they're called STNAs or LNAs or CNAs. They're all either licensed or they're certified. For the most part, they do a lot of the work that require, the help with these ADLs. They'll help get you fed. They help get you up. They'll help you go to the bathroom. They'll help get you dressed. They'll help make your bed. They'll help, bring you to activities. They'll help get you through transportation issues. They'll help get you from one place to another, right? This is the work of a CNA. And this person is asking the question, does anyone have any tips or tricks for getting CNAs to document? What they are talking about is CNAs have to write down, track everything that they do with all of their customers, all of their residents. And the reason for that is there's a bunch of reasons, but basically it's so that we can track and trend the life of that resident. Are they getting better? Or are they getting worse? Right? Are they more able to take care of themselves, or are they declining and getting less able to take care of themselves? And that's important for a plethora of reasons. It's important from the medical side so that we ensure that the care that we're providing the resident matches with their level of need. Very important. From the business side, the more heavy or the less ADLs a resident is able to do, if you can show decline, then of course you get more money because it costs more to take care of them. It costs more, it costs more labor, more staffing, more supplies to provide care with people with declining ADLs than it does somebody who doesn't have a decline in ADLs. And so there's a business side to it as well. And the state, the federal government, CMS, all your state Department of Aging, Department of Health, they all require that you keep a steady record of everybody's situation. If you're getting federal money, and now most nursing homes are, if you're getting federal money through Medicaid or Medicare, then we require you to keep documented track of all of the goings-ons with all of your customers. That's what they're talking about when they're talking about documentation. Here's the thing. They're asking, and there's so many little hidden things in this question. Does anyone have any tips or tricks? First and foremost, what they're asking for, do you remember there used to be, there still is, but there was a rotisserie chicken. I wrote about this in my first book, The Managing When No One Wants to Work. There's this thing about, there was this little new device about rotisserie chicken. I can't think of what it was called, but the tagline was, you could set it and forget it. All you have to do is put your chicken in there, set the timer, and then forget it. Go on with your day, because when that chicken is going to take care of itself, it is literally going to go from a raw chicken that is unpalatable to anybody, and within no time at all, have a little timer that goes ding, and poof, all of a sudden, dinner is served. You don't have to do anything more but to set it and then forget it. I got to say that's what this post reminded me of. Does anyone have any tips or tricks for getting CNAs to work? Meaning, does anyone know how I can just set it and forget it? The answer is, quite honestly, no. There are a few exceptions. There are going to be people you're going to employ, and thank God for them. The type of people who you hire and you don't need to give any direction to. My gosh, I got to tell you, every time I meet somebody who doesn't need to be actively managed, that is, you don't need to actively be looking over their shoulder, actively checking to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing or being where they're supposed to be being, I immediately go, have we approached them about being a manager? I always want to recruit the super worker into a supervisor position. But they are outnumbered. I was going to say they're rare. They're not as rare as they are outnumbered. They seem rare because they're so outnumbered by people who you cannot set and forget. There are most of our employees in long-term care are not the type who can be just given a task and you never have to go in and look in on them ever again. And quite honestly, I would argue that is also a pretty, it's a rude thing to do. And I fell for that too. I mean, I got to tell you that I can't tell you how many times I would meet somebody who I would start working with. And when I first started working in long-term care, I was working in housekeeping. And I would I would hire somebody who every time I went on their unit to find out how things were going, they were always working. They were always on their game. They were always where they were supposed to be doing. Their units were always really looking good. And so I started to spend less and less and less time with them, less time checking up on them, because I didn't need to check up on them. I didn't need to go on the floor to say, they didn't need me to come up on their unit for them to be working. However, I did learn quite quickly that although they would complain, so it's this dichotomy of human beings. We just love to complain, right? And there's this whole thing about a grumble and a meta-grumble. Maybe we'll talk about that in a different video. But when I was constantly going up and I would be doing rounds, just rounding and rounding and rounding, I would start getting complaints from the employees. Like, you don't have to keep coming up here. Well, you're always coming up here. And I overhear them saying that to each other. Ralph's always on my unit. Ralph's always on my unit. He's always coming. He doesn't trust us. And so I was like, well, all right. For those who I can trust, they have proven that they do a really great job without me. So I'm like not going up. And then all of a sudden I start hearing, no, Ralph never comes and sees me. Ralph, he must not like us. I'm like, I can't win, right? Like, either I'm there too much or I'm not there enough. And there is something to the whole Goldilocks, right? Something that's just right, the right amount of time. But I got to tell you, instead of the right amount of time, it's the right type of conversation. That's even better than how often should you go up on a unit? How often should you be checking on people? That's a different question as to what you should be doing or saying when you go up. And I think that's really where the magic is. It's not about going up and always going, are you where you're supposed to be? Is this work looking good? But it's like, how are you? How is everything going? Do you need anything? Do you have everything? Is there anything I can do to help? That is way more effective, and it helps build relationships, and you can do that to people that don't need any help, and you can do that to people who do need help. You can do that to people who don't need a lot of supervision, and you can do that same thing to people who do need a lot of supervision. Because again, Jocko Willink, if you don't know who Jocko Willink is, I recommend looking him up. He wrote this great book on leadership called The Dichotomy of Leadership. And he talks about this, going too hard, not going hard enough. And there's always this dichotomy. But one of the things that he said is, he talks about every interaction with an employee, or with anybody, honestly, is a opportunity to continue to build a relationship with them. And I think that's fantastic. That's what we should be thinking about. We should be thinking about every time we meet with anybody, but especially an employee, anytime you get a one-on-one with an employee, that is your opportunity to continue to build and develop your relationship with them. So it's key. But back to this whole idea of any tips or tricks for getting CNAs, certified nursing assistants, to document or to work. The question really looks like they're asking, how do I get people to do their work without me having to manage them, without me having to look over the shoulder, without me having to spend any time trying to get them to do their work? And the answer is you can't. You can't. There is no tip or trick that is going to take away the job of a manager, the need of a manager. The truth is, it's not what you wish for. It's what you do. It's not what you wish. It's what you do. Managers need to be present. I'm not the biggest fan of managers having a job routine. Let me say that again. As a management development coach, as somebody who's worked in long-term care for more than 20 years, who works with administrators and DONs and nurse managers and housekeeping managers and maintenance managers and dietary managers, I tell them all the same thing. Resist the urge to doing it yourself. Resist the urge from picking up the mop. Resist the urge from answering the call light. Resist the urge from jumping on the line in the kitchen. Resist the urge from folding the laundry. Resist the urge of doing the work. That is not where management is. Management ends as soon as you start being an employee again. So as soon as you pick up the broom, as soon as you start answering call lights, you become a nurse, a CNA, a housekeeper, a dietary worker. You are no longer being the manager. Now, I know everybody in the world is going to say, how dare you say don't answer a call light. Everybody should answer a call light. I disagree. I think that it is important that managers ensure that their staff answer call lights. If there is no staff, if there's more call lights than there are staff, then I would say, okay, then the manager, the nurse manager in this instance, should or could easily pop their head into a resident room to say, is everything okay? We'll be right with you. Just give us a second. As long as their feet never leave the hallway. As soon as the nurse manager's feet leave the hallway and get into a resident room, they are no longer managing. They're now working as a CNA or a nursing assistant, a LNA, STNA, whatever they're actually called in your state. But that leads to a different scenario. If you just notice what I said I would invite managers to consider that their feet should not leave the hallway. But what I am indicating is that the manager is in the hallway. And most of the managers that I know, nurse managers, they are not in the hallway. They're not in the building during AM care between 7 and 9 a.m. Between 7 and 9 a.m. is the most important part of the day for a nursing home and an assisted living home. The most active day is between 7 and 9 a.m. And I know too many managers who don't even show up until 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And then when they do, they go right to their office. They close the door. They sit behind behind the closed door. They go to a morning meeting. They spend zero time in the hallway while their staff are working to take care of their residents. That, my friends, is the problem. There is no tip or trick to getting CNAs to work. The tip or the trick, if there is one, is that the manager has to be in the hallway. Manager has to be present. The manager has to make sure the employee is doing their work. I don't know many employees who, while standing in front of their manager, say, I'm not doing that work. And I know that there are some, I've had people do that to me, but I just walk them out the door. They don't stay for the day. They're not like, oh, I told Ralph I'm not going to work today, and he said fine, and we just all went and took an additional 30-minute smoke break. No. The reason your CNAs are not documenting is because there's nobody making sure they're documenting. If you are checking documentation at the end of the day, you're the one who is wrong. Don't wait until the end of the day. And that's the other thing too, is so many people are like, we're going to wait for till 2 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, everybody's going to be documenting. You know, there isn't many other professions that allow that to happen. Doctors don't allow that to happen. Doctors don't do that. Doctors meet with a patient, and it drives me crazy, to be quite honest, because I go see my doctor, and the doctor's like, so how are you? And I'm telling them, and they're typing everything I'm saying. I'm like, how about you just listen to me without typing? And the answer is they can't. They need to document right then. They can't wait until 2 o'clock. They can't wait till the end of the day to go, gosh, what did he say? What was the blood pressure? You know, like you have to document at that time. Everybody does that, except for, in my experience, we allow CNAs to wait until the end of the day. To 2 o'clock, we'll all start documenting, and you'll just be guessing. You'll be guessing. God, what was their weight this morning? What did they say? I don't remember how much they ate for breakfast this morning. Document as you go. And the only way you're going to get most nursing assistants, CNAs, to document as they go, the only way you're going to get CNAs to work as they go is if you have a manager stationary in the hallway, in the area they are working, not behind a closed door, not down the hall at some other meeting, not doing their own job. If you have a manager that has a full-time job at the same time they're being a manager, you do not have a manager. You don't have a manager. You have somebody you can blame when things are not getting done. You have somebody who you can force to work 24/7, well, because you're the manager. But if you have somebody who is in a job position routinely, 8 hours a day, take away the manager title. They are not a manager. They can't be a manager. You can't manage effectively and be in a job position. It just simply doesn't work. All right, if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. Turn on the notifications so that you get more notifications about this live stream. Me ranting all things about managing, especially in a long-term care setting. I just started reading this book called Tender Love and Greed from 1974. It's a book about the nursing home industry in the 70s and how terrible it is. I'm going to tell you right now, as I'm sitting here and I'm reading through it, it's as relevant today as it was then. I see the same issues. We'll talk about that again next time. See you guys later.